Welcome everyone to the Walk and Roll Truckee Meadows Community Meeting number 1. It's May 24th. Excited to have you here tonight. To get us started, I'm going to have Dan, Director of Planning, kind of give us a lay of the land, introduce his team. Before we get going, if there's anybody who would like to listen and participate in Spanish, please go down to the globe at the bottom of the screen. You can click English or Spanish and pick your language preference from there. So I'd like to bring on Dan, Director of Planning, to kind of set the stage a little bit for us, and then kind of introduce his team, and then we'll get going here.
Thank you, Cole. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Dan Dengis. I'm the Director of Planning with RTC, and I have with me my colleagues Sarah Going and Marquise Williams, together with Cole from Alta and his group. We are the project team. And really, I don't want to steal Cole's thunder too much, so I'll kind of let the presentation speak for itself. And Cole's going to go run through kind of what we have in store for us regarding the initial presentation, and then some fun interactive exercises that we have lined up for the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. As Dan said, we're very excited for our evening tonight. We have a lot of fun activities planned for you. First, we're going to just give an overview of the project, then talk through the draft vision and goals for the project, touch on some preliminary existing conditions, identify what opportunities there are for public involvement, some project next steps, and then we're going to get to the fun part and get to the breakout rooms, where we're going to be doing some interactive activities to gather your feedback and input into this plan. And we will have a Spanish language breakout room as part of that as well. So first, to give a lay of the land of the project overview, this is what's called the Active Transportation Plan, which is a component of the Regional Transportation Plan, which will be our 20-year transportation horizon. Now, the Active Transportation Plan is really an industry term that's used to describe any human-powered or assisted mode of transportation, including bicycles, scooters, skateboards, and devices with small electric motors, such as an e-bike or an e-scooter. We've rebranded this effort as the Walk and Roll Plan, Walk and Roll Truckee Meadows Plan, to be a little bit more approachable and clearly understandable, to point right at what it is focused on. I said this project is aimed at improving walking and rolling for all people, people of all ages and abilities. And really another way to think of this is that it's for people from the ages of 8 to 80, and really all ages and abilities in between. The reasoning for doing this is that the current system that we've largely built with bicycle lanes is typically not attractive to the majority of residents, as it's not enough to encourage or enable them to take a trip on a bike instead of a vehicle. As shown in this graphic from the Federal Highway Administration, this breaks people down into kind of their different categories of bicycling based on their level of experience and tolerance for stress. You can see the majority of people, 51 to 56% of people, fall within the interested but concerned category, which really means that they would like to get out on a bike more, use that mode more often, but are typically concerned for their safety while using bike lanes or other highly stressful facilities on high-speed, high-volume roadways and that kind of thing. The goal of this plan is to focus on this large user group, as we know that facilities that will benefit them and be comfortable to them will also benefit those riders who are much more confident and maybe out cycling on our roads today. It's important to note that this plan is not just for pedestrians as well. It's not just for bicyclists, but for pedestrians as well. The goal of this will include a review of the current pedestrian network and environment throughout the Truckee Meadows to identify areas to improve and strategies to make continued improvements for years to come. This is important as seniors age in place and students aim to walk to school and increased walk and bike sheds surrounding their schools. Now, looking at the plan itself and what some of the work that will go into it, we've already conducted a review of past plans to help ensure that we're building off of and complementing the work that's already been completed. We've also developed a project vision and draft goals, which we'll look at in a moment and get your input on during the breakout rooms. The vision and goal will help keep the project team focused on the ultimate outcome of the planning effort. And as part of this plan, we'll also be updating some key data inputs, including the locations and width of sidewalks and crosswalks, and the location and type of bicycle facilities throughout the area. This data will help inform the overall planning process and be maintained by RTC going forward. Now, that updated bike facility data and sidewalk data, as I said, will be key inputs into the data-driven existing conditions analysis. Under this portion of the project, we'll review the existing transit network and available metrics to identify areas of needs in terms of equity. Additionally, this project will include a review of safety data from recent years, recent crash data, to identify typical areas for crashes for pedestrians and for bicyclists. And we'll also conduct what's called a bicycle level of traffic stress analysis and a pedestrian experience index. These analyses will quantify the level of stress and comfort on the roadways for the average adult while using the facilities that are there in the context that the road is in on those two different modes, walking or bicycling. And that information will help inform project recommendations later in the project. In addition to the analysis of existing condition data, we'll also be engaging with the community throughout this project. We have the existing project website, which is really a one-stop shop for all project-related information and links to upcoming as well as past meetings. We'll record and upload this meeting on there once it's finished. We've also set up a project email which connects you with myself, Dan, and the RTC project team if you have additional thoughts and comments. We've also launched a community survey interactive map, which has been open since the beginning of May, and that will continue to be available through the end of June. Additionally, we've developed a survey that's focused on parents and school-age children to identify their needs for improving routes to schools. We'll be conducting focus meetings for seniors and people with disabilities, as well as youth population, and be working closely with our partner agencies to identify policy, programming, engineering issues and solutions, and reaching out to community at existing events and scheduled virtual meetings, just like tonight. We'll have another community meeting further into the fall to review project findings and draft recommendations. The plan itself, the outcome will create a number of outputs, including recommendations for adjusting existing monitoring programs, identifying facility selection best practices, and a project prioritization framework. Additionally, this project will identify recommendations for previously identified projects from the existing bicycle and pedestrian master plan. The plan will also identify roadway typologies for regional roadways based on their land use context. Now, this means that the plan will intend to identify how an arterial roadway should accommodate bicycles and pedestrians in the urban, suburban, and rural contexts. This will help to right-size the facility designs and accommodate more active transportation in more densely populated areas where there's a higher typical need. Additionally, we'll be developing cost estimates that'll provide for an order of magnitude cost for applying typologies to the network. Now, we are just in the beginning portion of this project. You can see that we're in the evaluation of the current network, where we're focusing on a lot of community engagement. We'll look to be working on project recommendations over the summer and bring that back in the fall and look to have a final plan there in February 2024. So that's a high-level overview of the project itself. Now we're going to get into the vision that will be guiding the project. I'm going to read this because I think it's an important thing that we all make sure we're on the same page, and this is going to be guiding the plan. So the vision that we've identified is we envision a connected network of comfortable, convenient, and reliable facilities for people of all ages and abilities, walking, biking, and rolling on a mobility device which prioritizes accessibility to jobs, schools, shopping, neighborhoods, community facilities, parks, and regional trails within the Truckee Meadows. Certainly a large goal, but that's where we intend to strive to go. The overall goals for the project, you can see we have identified 7 different goals that we're wanting to focus on as we develop this project, from increasing connectivity, expanding accessibility, improving safety, expanding mode share, streamlining implementation and funding, ensuring that we're making these things happen quickly, and then maintaining the system sustainably. There's also the goal to leverage what are called secondary benefits, really looking at the additional benefits that come when you install a bicycle and pedestrian facility, looking at benefits to public health, economic development, placemaking, sustainability, and the like. There's a lot there, and we're going to get you to rank these in the breakout rooms. So we'll bring this back to you and have these in front of you during that time. And again, we'll be ranking those in the breakout rooms, and here's the vision and the goal just together. So with that, I'm going to just transition to kind of covering some initial findings from our analysis of the existing conditions of the area. First, we did an analysis of the transit network to identify some opportunities for multimodal connections. We really focused on the fixed route and micro transit services as key opportunities for multimodal connections, as transit users either walk, bike, or roll as the first leg of their journey. Creating those strong connections between high demand transit areas and residential areas will be key going forward. There is a focus on the top 7 routes that represent more than half of the current ridership. And then FlexRide also presents a potential opportunity in those FlexRide zones to improve walking and bicycling routes, connecting to high demand areas to help foster more multimodal connections. We also conducted an analysis of equity. Now, equity is an important aspect in the transportation planning process because it, in years prior, was not a portion of it. Transportation planning practice really has a legacy of neglecting to question whether the benefits or burdens of transportation investments are distributed equally. So the analysis of equity and inclusion in project identification, prioritization is first step to rectifying that. The ways to measure equity, there are a lot of different definitions to do it. We've identified 6 different dimensions of equity that include, that cover health, socioeconomic, and environmental data that help to inform transportation decision making. Looking at the factors that we included, you can see those 9 factors on the side, as well as the overall weighting that we apply to them. What this analysis does is takes all that data and combines it into a community-wide analysis and identifies a top areas in Washoe County that have need based on these metrics as a percentage. So it ranks them percentage-wise. And then we focus on the top 20% of that composite index as the areas having the highest equity needs based on these factors. We've also incorporated the Justice 40 analysis, which is a federal analysis looking at a holistic view of equity, including things beyond just transportation, including things such as access to broadband. Our analysis is a little bit more focused on transportation and things that can be affected by active transportation, but we included this as an important data point. So you can see here the areas we've identified as having high equity needs being generally downtown, in the downtown Reno area, between Virginia Street and the airport in Reno, within Sun Valley, within Central Sparks, and then in the areas surrounding Lemon Drive and North Virginia Street intersection. These areas compared to Washoe County as a whole typically have higher levels of poverty. As you can see, within these high equity need areas, it's about double the percentage of people living at 200% poverty level or below. It's also a higher level of Hispanic population within these areas, and a higher proportion of renters compared to owners in comparison with Washoe County as a whole. Additionally, these areas also have a higher level or a lower level of physical activity, a higher need for increased physical activity, and a much higher level of families without access to a vehicle, from 7% as the county average to 17% in those high equity area needs. This analysis shows that these areas have unique needs, which are more focused than what's typical really across the county. This would be used to inform project prioritization and implementation going forward. Additionally, we reviewed, as I mentioned, crash data from the most from recent 5 years. Looking at that data, you can see the concentration of these crashes are mostly within the downtown Reno area, but fatalities and other injury crashes are located throughout the area. In total, there were 516 pedestrian-involved crashes during this time, which is about 1.4% of all total reported crashes during that same period. However, pedestrians were overrepresented comparatively in fatal crashes, where they accounted for 22% of the total number of fatal crashes over that time period. Comparatively, there were fewer crashes that involved bicyclists over that same time period, 287, but the vast majority of these 257, about 90% of them, resulted in an injury crash. So just highlighting the importance of reducing the chance of crashes, and that vulnerable road users typically get injured when those occur. As far as where these are happening, and boiling this down a little bit more, we're able to see where these crashes are generally occurring. And generally it's on arterial roadways, and those roadways with high vehicle speeds and volumes. As we see here, arterials are the main location for crashes involving pedestrians or bicyclists, but they're just about 13% of the roadways as far as lane miles. These roadways really represent a major area of safety enhancement and improvements for active transportation across our community, or at least they have the potential for it. Medium volume roads, rather, are also an area of focus, as collisions with bicycles and pedestrians occur on these roadways disproportionately as well. There's a total of 24% of all bicycle crashes and 22% pedestrian crashes which occur on these roadways on the roadways that have between 10 to 15,000 cars a day. But this type of roadway represents just 2% of the total roadway network by lane miles. And then additionally, looking at roadways that are signed at 35 miles an hour, which represent just 5% of the network, they account for 1/3 of pedestrian-involved crashes. Now we know that intersections are also a problem. We have about half of collisions with bicycles and pedestrians occur at intersections. Of the crashes that occur at intersections with those users, the majority of those occur at intersections with an arterial roadway. Another point, looking at emergency routes, these are designated to allow emergency vehicles to travel quickly to reach their destination. And these routes typically restrict what kind of traffic calming is allowed on them. looking at the crashes that have occurred outside of that network, we see that the majority of those occur on routes that are about 25 miles per hour. So these present an opportunity to introduce some traffic calming features and potentially improve some safety on relatively low speed streets. And then additionally, across the board, data is the driver of how a lot of decisions get made, and better data is always beneficial. As we look at the data, we see that the older data is a little bit less complete than the newer data. Our officers are doing a great job out there as they're recording crashes and continuing to do a good job as they record more and more. So as we get more data, that will continue to help us going forward. Related to safety, we reviewed the current conditions of bicyclists on the roadway and on shared use paths using a bicycle level of traffic stress analysis. Now, this analysis methodology is a way to quantify how stressful a roadway is for the average adult bicyclist, if it's either in this context or in something more akin to this. It is something that is intended to let you know what kind of bicycle environment you'll experience on the different roadways. This analysis is based on that updated bicycle facility layer that I mentioned earlier and incorporates the existing facilities, speed limits, on-street parking, number of lanes, and presence of trails and shared use paths throughout the network. Overall, the high-level takeaways from this detailed analysis that we see here are that neighborhood roadways are typically low stress for riders, and these create small networks or islands, if you will, of low stress facilities. However, in between these neighborhoods, we see that collectors and arterials create mid to high stress levels for bicyclists and break up the neighborhoods, making it a little bit hard to get from one neighborhood to the other. And then on high-speed roadways where there's a path or low-stress facility that's been installed, the stress level is significantly improved. The Southeast Connector is a prime example of this, where bicycling on the roadway would be a highly stressful environment for most of us, but it's marked as low stress due to the presence of a shared use path. Going forward, we'll also conduct a pedestrian experience index, which is a similar methodology, to the bicycle level of traffic stress. That'll be developed based on updated sidewalk location and width data, which is currently in progress. And then that analysis will take into account sidewalk presence, widths, sidewalk buffer width and type, and then number of lanes on the roadway. That's a high-level review of where the project is currently, what we've seen, and where we're going to go from here. Now I want to get into kind of further out, just highlight some next steps for us. We will be completing that existing conditions analysis this spring and look to wrap up our first round of public outreach at the end of June. We'll be having, as I mentioned, a focus meeting for seniors and people with disabilities, as well as for a youth population. Do keep in mind that the interactive map and survey will be open through the end of June, so please continue to engage with that tool. We've had a high level of engagement already with about 1,000 interactions with it, either a vote or a comment or a line or something like that. So we appreciate that level of engagement. We have obviously the public meeting number 1 today, which thank you for attending. And then we will be working throughout the summer to develop project recommendations, roadway typologies, and then come back with draft recommendations at a public meeting in about the August-September timeframe. So that is a high-level overview of where we are, where we're going with the project. Now we want to transition into our breakout rooms, really the fun part of our public meeting here today. But first, I want to give you an overview of kind of how those are going to work. So we're going to have 3 different breakout rooms. We're going to have 2 English language ones and 1 Spanish language one. Will allow you to select which one you want to go into. And if you have any trouble, Francisco's the magician in the sky here that can get you into the right room if you have any trouble. We're going to go through 3 different phases of the breakout room. We're going to first rank goals of the project and identify overall challenges for walking and biking throughout the area. Then we're going to go through a roadway thought experiment and have a little bit of time with the interactive map. I do want to just set some ground rules as we get into the breakout rooms, that it's important to respect competing views, make space for alternative perspectives, recognize differences, acknowledge compromise will be essential, and please keep responses clean and free of profanity or vulgar language as well. For the breakout rooms, we're going to be relying on Mentimeter polling. So that will require you to go to menti.com and we'll give you a special code to enter right in there. That's going to allow you to follow along with our prompts and see your responses combined with everybody else in the breakout room in real time. If you're having any trouble with the technology or anything like that, feel free to raise your hand and ask one of the Alta or our RTC staff who are in the room. I did want to make a note for the roadway thought experiment that we're going to be going through. We have the audio of the roadway, of a roadway that's of varying speeds. We want to make sure that you can hear that to help visualize what it's like to be out on that roadway. So make sure that you have your audio up enough. Hopefully you can hear me now, but hopefully you can have it up enough where you can hear the roadway in the background to help visualize what kind of facility would be comfortable there. And then for the interactive map, this is going to be just some focus time to allow you to get into the map and add points, make comments, like other comments and the like. If you haven't already, there's tutorials included in the tool. We'll do a demonstration of it in the breakout room. And again, if you have any trouble, raise your hand or reach out to one of the staff in the room. So with that, we are going to be moving into the breakout rooms. You see we're going to have myself and Sarah in breakout room 1. We'll have Dan, Marquise, and Charlie in breakout room 2, and Paulo and Maria in breakout room 3. Now, I don't know if we've had any questions come up, but if you've had any as I've been talking, I hope you've kept those and we can kind of get into those in the breakout rooms. After the breakout room closes, that's going to take maybe about an hour. That's going to be the end of our meeting. But if you have any additional thoughts, comments, things that you want to get in front of the project team, please email the full project team here at walkandroll at rtcwasho.com. That'll hit, again, myself, Dan, and the full project team, Sarah McKees as well. With that, we can start dividing up into the breakout rooms.